Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Real Opinions. I am here on my own again today because the group has disbanded for Easter. And I was the one lucky enough to go see Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice early. So, here is my one day early review of Batman vs. Superman. For people that are still a little bit confused, Batman vs. Superman follows the continuity of Man of Steel, which is kind of an entirely new DC universe separate from all the Christopher Nolan Batman movies that came out like 4 years ago. So Zack Snyder made Man of Steel with Henry Cavill as Superman, kind of the mopey, emo Superman, and this is the sequel to that, also featuring Batman. The actual plot itself is a little jumbled and a bit all over the place and very, very overstuffed, but the very basics of it is that we kind of start with Batman, Bruce Wayne, now played by Ben Affleck, who has experienced massive loss in the wake of the final battle of Man of Steel, where Superman fights General Zod and Metropolis basically crumbles around them. Bruce Wayne saw one of his major kind of skyscrapers and a lot of his work buddies killed in that attack, so he has this kind of vendetta against Superman and thinks that if there's even a 1% chance that he could be our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty. That's an actual line from the film. So Batman is around. He's been around for like 20 years, I think they say. He doesn't like Superman, wants to take him out of the picture. Also in the picture is Lex Luthor, now played by Jesse Eisenberg. It's kind of like a young version of Lex Luthor. Almost like, they almost play on it like he's the son of Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor. It's kind of strange, quite cool. Who also wants to get rid of Superman because he doesn't trust him. Basically, a lot of people don't trust Superman in the wake of Man of Steel. Then at the same time, you've got the American government questioning which side Superman's fighting for, etc., etc. So there's basically just a lot of stuff based around Superman. Batman kind of gets his own plot thread, Lex Luthor kind of gets his own plot thread, but they all kind of pull back into this one thing of, can we trust this gigantic alien that's flying around and destroying things? And what basically comes out of that plot is something that's actually really, really entertaining for the most part. There are a lot of kind of fight sequences, battle sequences. I mean, this is no surprise. They're all in the trailer. There's the bit where Batman fights Superman, surprise, surprise. There's the bit where Batman does cool stuff in the Batmobile, surprise, surprise. And there's a bit where Superman does cool stuff flying around, surprise, surprise. So there's nothing kind of majorly new here based on the trailers. If you've seen one of the trailers, the middle trailer, you've probably seen almost the whole film. There's a couple of extra surprises, which I'll get to a bit later. But for the most part, it is just this kind of really cool, epic action movie. But it's a really cool, epic action movie that kind of, because there's so many cool, epic things going on, as usual with Zack Snyder, he kind of ignores the story and it kind of gets jumbled and overstuffed. And a lot of the time you don't really know what's going on or why it's going on. And basically, right from the outset of this film, Zack Snyder decides to try and juggle about 3 plots at once. And it's quite hard to follow sometimes. I mean, it's nice that Zack Snyder's tried to set it in this kind of more grounded world where superheroes are real, etc., etc. But that didn't work for Man of Steel, and here it does kind of sap quite a bit of the fun out of it. The movie's at its best when it's just kind of embracing the comic side of things. The new Batman is much more comic-y than Nolan's Batman, for example. He's very, very different. It's kind of almost a different character entirely. He's kind of a veteran of crime fighting. There's a lot of stuff going on with him and Alfred. There's a lot of stuff that's gone on in his past that has kind of wounded him quite a bit. You can tell that. And for that, he's kind of a much better character. There's a lot more going on, and you can kind of see panels from the Batman comics appearing on screen. And that's really, really cool. With Superman, though, that doesn't really happen. They just kind of continue this mopey Man of Steel vibe, which is really kind of depressing to watch at times. It kind of saps the energy out of the sequences he's in. And it kind of like slows the film down massively as well. It's basically, like I said, there's like 3 plots running at once. It's basically Zack Snyder's tried to make several different films at once. He's tried to make Man of Steel 2, which no one really wanted because Man of Steel 1 was kind of dull. He's tried to make a new kind of rebranded Batman film, which is actually arguably the best side of Batman vs. Superman, because Ben Affleck's Batman is actually really kick-ass and really quite cool. He's almost kind of one of the most definitive ways of imagining the character. There is something quite drastically wrong with him, which I'll get to in a minute, but there's kind of a lot more going on under the hood than you're used to. And that's drastically better than the Man of Steel 2 side. And then at the same time, it's like a Justice League Origins movie. And I think this is kind of what derails it a lot of the time. Cool action, for the most part, like at least 1 or 2 of the plot threads really work. But then as the film goes on, you get more and more of these kind of Justice League bookmarks that are thrown in to kind of set up the next film, which comes out next year. There are kind of these really elaborate, extravagant dream sequences which really don't make any sense. There's one which is very, very, very clearly part of the Justice League plot, which doesn't fit in this film at all. It comes across as like a fever dream. It's almost like a reel's missing or something. It makes no sense. And then the rest of them might make sense, but they're really, really badly shoehorned in. Wonder Woman is in this movie. Surprise, surprise. She's in pretty much all of the trailers. She's actually really good. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is pretty great. Her action sequences are really great. But a lot of her kind of narrative scenes in this film before the big finale are all to do with the Justice League. And it's literally just her sitting there talking to Batman about the Justice League or going through emails about the Justice League. And these scenes really don't fit in the plot. They slow everything down massively. And from here we kind of collapse into the problems, because this film has a lot of problems. It is, as I say, very entertaining. I was never bored whilst watching this film because there's always so many things going on. But the problem is, all of those things going on means that the whole thing is kind of modelled, and quite a few of those things going on aren't particularly great. You get some parts that are quite fast-paced, you get some parts that are very slow, they clash against each other too much. Some characters are better than others. Jeremy Irons' new look Alfred is really, really great. He steals pretty much the only two jokes in the whole film. Like I said, Ben Affleck's Batman's really great. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor is even pretty good. Every now and again he kind of flies off the handle and is a little bit too insane, but for the most part it's kind of a really cool imagining of Lex Luthor, and it definitely works in the film as well. Amy Adams as Lois Lane is kind of a bit of a wet blanket. She's pretty strong at the beginning and then gradually kind of becomes less and less important as the film goes on, and she keeps trying to find a way to stay relevant but can't. And then obviously Superman is still mopey, and I mean this film plays more to his strengths than Man of Steel did. There's less of him kind of like milling around being all upset, more kind of just about him flying around looking cool, which is way better, but it's still kind of Henry Cavill doesn't really work as the character. He doesn't have enough charisma, and he's just a bit dull. That's the problem. Now, something I do have to point out is a major, major, major flaw with this film that really kind of pushed it quite far down. Like, I was really enjoying this film, or this side of the film, until something happened. Because there are moments in this film where you're like, oh my god, this is amazing. This film is going to be really good. It's like epic blockbuster of the year. Awesome. And then something will suddenly happen and you'll suddenly be like, oh, no. For example, everything's going really, really well, and then Doomsday from the trailer shows up and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot he looks so terrible. Or Batman's looking really, really cool, and then he kills a guy. Like, what? That's not Batman at all. That doesn't work. It was very, very confusing, and you could kind of feel the whole theatre suddenly stop and suddenly go, what? If you're all confused about why I'm offended by the fact that Batman kills a guy, because I mean, yeah, he kills people in Batman Returns, I think it is. Batman's not supposed to kill people. That's kind of his one rule. That's the one thing that makes him Batman. You take that away and he's just the Crimson Bolt or the Punisher. He's just a guy in an outfit that goes around whacking people. I mean, yes, he's been doing it for 20 years. He's scarred, he's wounded, etc. There might be reasons behind why he's doing it, but Zack Snyder never addresses them. There's never a point when he stops and goes, oh, something terrible happened in my past, and now I'm not the Batman I want to be anymore. One line. That's all it takes. One line. The way Batman is introduced in this film, the first time you see him in the suit, is amazing. It's arguably better than a lot of the moments from Nolan's Batman films. It's incredible. It's so dark and vicious and Batman. And then 5 minutes later, he's mowing people down with machine guns. And you're like, whoa, hold on a minute here. Also, in terms of future Batman films, this kind of fucks him up royally. Because the whole point of Batman's kind of problems with his enemies, the reason why Batman's villains are arguably the best in the whole comic world, not just DC's comic world, is the fact that Batman can't kill. The Joker is the embodiment of exact evil, and Batman, there's nothing that would do Batman better than to kill him. The two constantly clash. Joker's killed numerous amounts of Batman's family, Batman's friends. All Batman needs to do is kill him, but he can't, because it's this one moral code. He's always on the edge, about to push it, but he can't. Take that away, And there's no tension between either of these villains. The second they meet up, Batman might as well just pull out a gun and shoot them in the head. It makes no sense. So, as you can see, Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice is kind of a bit of a mess. Some parts are actually really, really brilliant, and there are kind of visions of a really, really great, proper DC Comics film in there somewhere. Zack Snyder has come a long way since Man of Steel, but there's also just as much shit. It's kind of 50-50, which I guess is better than Man of Steel 70-30, but it's still frustrating. Hopefully by the time Justice League comes out next year, we'll have a better idea of what's going on, and Zack Snyder will be a lot more well-versed, and it'll be a lot more paced out, because that is 2 movies rather than this one that's just kind of crammed everything into one. Overall, it's entertaining, and I enjoyed it a lot, but there are so many moments that are just so blindingly awful. It's like they've been whipped straight out of a Michael Bay film or something. There's so many moments that just scream stupid Hollywood blockbuster. And it's really, really irritating because they've clearly tried to make a very grown-up movie here. And to some extent they've succeeded, but in other ways they really, really haven't. I don't know what else to say other than rating 6 out of 10. I was kind of jumping between a 5 and a 6. At times this was as high as an 8, and then it kept getting knocked down again. Like I say, there are moments that are some of the best of the year, and there are moments that are some of the worst of the year. It's kind of odd that the film has become such an amalgamation of those two emotions, but hey ho. Thank you for watching. As always, look out for more Real Opinion stuff in the future. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.